What is a pharmaceutical? A pharmaceutical is a biologically active drug or poison. These are equivalent terms. Drug, medicine, poison, pharmaceutical, those are actually all equivalent terms. What makes a thing a medicine or a poison is just the dose. So if we take a little bit of something, it can be a medicine. If we take a lot of it, it's a poison. Now, pharmaceuticals come from where? I think most of us know by now about 80% of pharmaceuticals come from plants or were derived from plants. Now, remember, we evolved or adapted in an environment where we ate hundreds of plants a year. And those plants, those wild plants, contained a whole suite, a whole host of drugs, of basically pharmaceuticals, but in their whole plant form. We ate so many different wild plants that we were every day eating lots and lots and lots, literally thousands of different drugs. Now, our bodies adapted and evolved in that environment so that we became physiologically enmeshed in a drug-filled environment. So we evolved to be eating all these drugs in our natural diet. Now, once we started domesticating plants, we bred the drugs out. Here's what I mean by that. If you think about the foods that are in your supermarket in the produce section, there's very few of them that are bitter. But if we go out into wild environments and we pick something like dandelion or a wild lettuce, we'll find that they're very bitter. Now, the bitter flavor is the drug. And the foods that we get in our supermarket have had the drugs bred out of them. That's why they're not bitter. Now, see, the bitter taste is what keeps the thing from being eaten by pests. So the thing that's a medicine for us in a plant is the thing that protects the plant from pests. Now, the thing is if we breed the plants to no longer be bitter, they no longer have a defense in nature. That's why it's so hard to grow plants. That's why we need pesticides and herbicides and fences. Because have you ever noticed that your broccoli never escapes out of your garden and takes over your lawn? Why?
Yeah,
it can't, because pests will eliminate it because it has no defense anymore. Now, because it has no defense, it has nothing bitter left in it, it has no drugs left in it. So what's happened is we eat a diet now that's deficient in drugs. And what that means is we're all suffering from a lack of natural medicines because we're not eating natural plants anymore. So we are all suffering from a huge drug deficiency. Now, the pharmaceutical companies are leveraging this. And what they're doing is we're eating a diet deficient in plant drugs, and we're taking pharmaceutical versions of those plant drugs sold back to us at massive markups. So it's making these companies mega wealthy. What they do is they find the drug in the plant that we need, they synthesize that in a lab, produce it very inexpensively, and feed it back to us while we eat a diet devoid in the natural drug.
Sure. Like aspirin, for example, right?
Like so many things. I also want to point out to people that technically cocaine is a pharmaceutical. Technically heroin is a pharmaceutical. These are, what they are is they're single individual compounds that have been taken out of a plant. So there's no real clear line between what are drugs, street drugs, and what are pharmaceutical drugs. It all has to do with dose. And, of course, Bayer Pharmaceuticals, who brought us heroin in the first place, touted as a fantastic medicine. So what ends up happening is we eat a diet deficient in plant drugs, and then we take these drugs in such isolated and refined and high-dose forms that we actually poison ourselves. And then we develop all of the symptoms of excess of these drugs, and then we treat that with more drugs. The simple solution is to begin incorporating more natural plants, particularly herbs in the form of teas, into our diet. That helps to replicate our original diet. And then we start getting exposed to these plant drugs. We don't have the need anymore for these pharmaceutical drugs. Now, of course, there's a huge interest in keeping us in the dark on this, and that's why more and more we're seeing herbs are made illegal. And what we're given access to is pharmaceuticals.